Part 160. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1591. At this time, Mengwei had woken up and was standing on the top of Sword Mountain in a daze, not knowing what he was thinking. When she heard the voice coming from behind her, she didn't look back and whispered softly, "Zuyun, have you settled everything outside?" Zuyun nodded and said, "Okay, but we encountered another problem." Mengwei was slightly unhappy and said, "Zuyun, you promised me to go to the fairy world with me." Zuyun smiled bitterly and said, "I would like to go, but the problem is, I can't enter the world of the universe. If I go to the fairy world and encounter a strong enemy, I will have nowhere to escape. Can't we enter the great universe world?" Mengwei was stunned for a moment, turned around, but did not look at Zuyun, but looked into the distance. "That is the direction of the small courtyard. You can't get in from outside, why don't you try from here?" Zuyun suddenly slapped his head, "Look at me, I'm all confused. Let's go and see it together." Mengwei smiled sweetly, naturally took Zuyun's hand and said, "Then let's go. There is nothing abnormal in the small courtyard, but it can enter the world of the universe." But after entering it, Zuyun's heart sank. It is true that he can feel that the universe world is restoring its original power. Indeed, as World Tree said, it took a lot of original power to deal with the nightmare monster. But what made Zuyun feel his heart sinking was the charred corpses all over the ground. In the Xiphon realm, every time he encountered a city, he would place all the corpses inside it. This is... Mengwei frowned and turned to look at Zuyun. "Consider, my believer." Zuyun smiled bitterly. "No, that's not what I mean. What I want to say is that, they seem to have had 3 souls and 7 souls extracted before they died, which is why their death was so tragic." "What did you say?" Zuyun's eyes suddenly widened. When he first saw these corpses, he saw that they were so charred that he thought they had been burned alive by fire. But now listening to Mengwei say, if only one person was extracted, it can only be said to be the cultivation method of some evil cultivators. But so many people have had their souls taken away, could this be their secret method to break through the heavens and ascend to the immortal world? While Zuyun was still thinking, Mengwei made a shocking statement, saying, "This is like a sacrificial method that comes from the devil world. I don't know the specifics. But this is the lower world, and if there is an immortal method, then it's extremely rare, and it's even more impossible to think of it with the method of sacrifice in the demon world. Maybe it's just a coincidence." The madness of the last evil cultivator before his death suddenly appeared in Zuyun's mind. After thinking about it, for fear of affecting Mengwei, he decided not to say anything for now. The evil cultivator said that it was passed down from the immortal world. Evil fairy, demon world. The two parties seem to have no relationship, but because of Nangong Tianli, they are inseparable. "Zuyun, do you want them to rest in peace?" Mengwei sighed and stopped talking. Zuyun came to his senses and reached out to pinch a magic formula. In an instant, all the corpses turned into powder. He threw it over casually, and the powder condensed into a black ball. Zuyun Zhuikong made the black ball float in the air, and then he said, "I plan to put it in the air, throw them into the sea of the world, let them go." Mengwei nodded, and the two of them moved forward slowly. It seemed like a funeral. A full hour. They walked to the center of the universe. Under the gaze of all the creatures here, Zuyun threw the black ball into the sea of the world. Wow! The sea of the world set off waves, which instantly scattered the black ball. The powder melted into the sea water, drifted with the waves, and finally disappeared. "Xiaozu, this black ball is..." Big Go noticed Zuyun's arrival early, but did not bother him. He only asked questions after he finished the matter. "It's a long story. They worshipped me as a god. Even though they were in great pain, they still prayed that I could save them before they died. The big dog felt Zuyun's depressed mood and said nothing. Ergo said, Xiaozu, I think, you have done well enough. Although you are strong enough, you are still a monk in this lower world. Zuyun suddenly raised his head and said, what if I'm strong enough? Xiaozu Dego said, don't you know this? When we practice immortality, we just want to make ourselves strong enough. In fact, when we were young, we understood a truth. At the beginning, when we did good deeds, there were always some bad kids who bullied us. But later, we became worse than them, and they gave up. Although they stopped playing with us, they didn't dare to stop us from doing anything. Zuyun smiled bitterly. Why didn't he understand this? Only to be strong at that time, one only needed to be stronger than the children in the village. The three of them can use their brains, which is infinitely better than those kids who only know how to use brute force and temper. But this is the world of cultivating immortals, and the competition is about means, strategies, and realm. And the unknown fairyland. No matter how strong you are, where is the limit? Meng Wei seemed to see what Zuyun was thinking, and squeezed his hand gently. When Zuyun looked over, he said, actually, Zuyun, there is no limit to your strength, but you are better than a limited person, just be strong. This is why I plan to take you to the immortal world in advance. Because in this lower realm, even if you break through, you will not become stronger. Some hardships mean you are not strong enough. Zuyun suddenly realized it. I understand. Understand. Meng Wei chuckled, then, what else do you have to do in the lower world? Zuyun smiled slightly and said, if I am not strong enough alone, then let thousands of people make me stronger. Huangming Xing, right? The immortals in the upper world can covet this place, so why can't I? Meng Wei was stunned and said, do you have any ideas? No ideas. Zuyun raised his eyebrows and said, I, Zuyun, am not strong enough to go to the immortal world in the fusion stage. But, I suddenly realized that I have not been alone in the immortal path all these years. Sometimes, it is you, Meng Wei. Sometimes, it was De Go and Ergo. Sometimes, it was Master and Senior Brother Yet. Sometimes, it was those demon saints. And, Qi Niang. What do you mean? Zuyun suddenly became full of pride and said, since so many creatures worship me as a god, I will let them enter this world of the universe. They can continue to cultivate and become immortals in this world, and I can also get the power of their faith. The most important thing is that this world will not have those sinister human hearts, nor will there be demons who treat it as grass. You said, to take the entire Huangming Xing into the world of the universe. Meng Wei was also scared by Zuyun. He is only in the fusion stage. No matter how bad Huangming Xing is, it is still a world star in the fairy world. How dare he think? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1592. However, we still have to wait until the great universe world can be directly entered from the outside. Otherwise, even if I want to close it, the great universe world cannot be opened, so there is nothing I can do. Zuyun suddenly spread his hands and said with a smile. Meng Wei said, according to your opinion, it should be related to the source of power. Now that World Tree and World Mountain are sleeping, it should take a while, right? Indeed, I can only delay you a little longer. Hearing this, Meng Wei responded with a smile and said, at that time, we talked about going to the immortal world because there was the great universe world as a retreat. But now that the retreat is temporarily blocked, there is no harm in waiting a little longer. By the way, Zuyun suddenly slapped his forehead again, remembering his purpose of entering the universe in the first place, and said, I saw a mysterious scene in Kunlun. I can't understand it. You can come with me, go and have a look. Isn't your divine eye technique good? Meng Wei was also surprised. After watching the world of Dazhu for a while, Zhu Yun and Meng Wei returned to the top of Kunlun Mountain via the Immortal Mansion. This is. Meng Wei didn't even need the power of the holy demon. He could see some mysteries with just his demonic eyes. He couldn't help but exclaimed, "This seems to be talking about the law of chaos." Zhu Yun frowned, "Law of chaos?" "Yes," Meng Wei said with certainty, yes, you can't see it either. But do you still remember the circle in the center?" Zhu Yun's mind is now filled with the scene he saw before, so he naturally remembers it. Yin and Yang are two instruments, and two instruments can transform chaos. After a pause, Meng Wei said, 3 talents, 4 images, and 5 elements can all transform chaos. Just like you use the spiritual power of the 5 elements to completely fuse them together to form chaos. Similarly, chaos can transform the 5 elements. The 4 images transform into 3 talents and 2 rituals. This was originally just a guess in Zhu Yun's mind, but now he got confirmation from Meng Wei, and he couldn't help but become extremely excited. "You know this?" Meng Wei said strangely, "Everyone in the immortal world understands it, but this is just the surface. It is difficult to understand the essence. In fact, all laws in the world have rules to follow, and they are called laws. Everything comes from chaos and returns to chaos." Zhu Yun thought for a moment and said, "In other words, if I finally cultivate the spiritual power in my body into real chaos power, can I also use chaos to transform all things?" "It's theoretically possible, but as far as I know, no one in the fairy world has ever done this. On the contrary, there is a legend left in the fairy world. If you break through the chaos, you can be superior to the fairy world. But how extraordinary is this?" Zhu Yun took a deep breath and said, "Do you still have the figure of 5 elements Xianxia in your memory?" "Of course I know," Meng Wei smiled sweetly and said, "This is Nangang Tianli's #1 enemy. However, even though the 5 elements immortal has an outstanding appearance, it is difficult to cultivate the true power of chaos." Zhu Yun wondered, "The real power of chaos?" "Yes," Meng Wei nodded and said, "Zhu Yun, your current chaos power is just called chaos power. And the real chaos power is like those ethereal chaos powers in the fairy world that can transform all things." "Can it transform all things?" Zhu Yun took a breath. Meng Wei affirmed, "Yes, everything originates from chaos. The same goes for living beings, and so does the law." Zhu Yun seemed to remember something and said, "Then where does chaos come from?" "Chaos?" Meng Wei thought for a moment and said, "The most rumored one right now is Chaos Lotus." "Chaos Lotus?" Zhu Yun took a deep breath. "Wasn't there a Chaos Lotus growing in his belly?" This. Seeing Zhu Yun's incredible expression, Meng Wei thought he was scared, so he smiled and said, "It is said that Lotus can give birth to all things, and indeed, many people have seen that Lotus in the land of chaos. But I've never had a close encounter." Zhu Yun was silent. This Lotus was not that Lotus. But what if this is the same Chaos Lotus? It seems that if you want to confirm, you still have to go to the fairy world. Maybe he can take Kunlun Mountain into the universe, but at least with his current vision, he can't understand the truth. Meng Wei also said that in the fairy world, everyone understands some laws of chaos. Although it is superficial, but now I don't even understand it. Even Meng Wei knew the laws of chaos that he had understood for a long time, which made Zhu Yun even more determined to go to the fairy world. But he also remembered the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra at this time. To be honest, apart from the chi refining method, the rest of this skill is of little use to Zhu Yun. From the beginning of the elixir formation period, everything has turned in another direction. Chaos species also started from that time. So, could the void where the immortal mansion is located be a place of chaos? Where is the land of chaos? Meng Wei thought for a moment and said, the land of chaos has always been unstable, but now that many years have passed, I don't know if it has become different. Zuyun sighed and said, let's wait until we get to the fairy world. Meng Wei nodded. The two of them had nowhere to go, so they sat down back to back. Zuyun wanted to wait for the thorn demon to come looking for him. As for Meng Wei, naturally she will be wherever Zuyun is. However, a few days later, the spiritual world was suddenly shaken. Both of them stood up. This familiar tremor, I think it is the fusion of the West mortal realm. Zuyun said with a smile. By the way, Meng Wei said with a smile, have all the mortal worlds been integrated together now? Zuyun, how about we go around and take a look? Anyway, there is no need to go through any passages now. Wait a little longer until Lengbing comes. That demon cultivator. Yes. There seems to be something wrong with the beast controlling magic technique he practiced. Really? I remembered that it was the immortal tomb that Nangang Tianli prepared for himself, and Lengbing found the technique there. I know how to practice. Does he have a good relationship with you? If so, I can teach him. The two chatted one after another, and first the people from the Xianguang sect came here again. A few days later, the demon cultivators completely returned from the West mortal realm. I still haven't found the thorn demon. Zuyun said to Lengbing. Lengbing frowned. I thought it was because I was in the spirit world that I couldn't feel the stinging demon, but now that I'm back here, I still can't feel it. There's something wrong with your technique, let me teach you. Meng Wei smiled slightly, took a step forward and said. You. Zuyun smiled and said, friend Leng, just listen to her. Lengbing put away his thoughts. He believed in Zuyun now. When he took a closer look, he felt the extremely pure devilish energy in Meng Wei. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1593. It can be said that no one knows Nangang Tianli better than Meng Wei. The original Nujiao was divided into 3 parts. 2 of them were trapped in the magic jade bed and the bedroom respectively. The third part was naturally Meng Wei. Now, Meng Wei has received all of Nujiao's memories, and naturally knows the magic power. Zuyun set up restrictions for the 2 of them, and then chatted with a group of cultivators. They talked happily and even talked about meeting again in the fairy world. In response, Zuyun just smiled and agreed. They are all in the tribulation period. Now that the entire spiritual world has recovered, it must be a matter of time before they can trigger the heavenly tribulation and ascend to the Tao. Another day has passed, and the cultivators have all dispersed, except for those in the tribulation period. It seems that there is an invisible tacit understanding that they want to ascend together here. The last time, many people in the tribulation period ascended together was when they were on the ascension platform. Yayuan killed the 5 elements wanderer, and then attracted countless old monsters who were in seclusion to overcome the tribulation. Although the more cultivators who overcome the tribulation together, the stronger the tribulation will be. But in the same way, if these cultivators are trustworthy, then they can complement each other's strengths, deal with the tribulation with their own strengths, and ascend calmly. As for those ordinary cultivators, it is naturally not suitable to stay here, so as not to be added to the scope of the tribulation, which will harm others but not benefit themselves. After a long time, Lengbing walked out of the formation with a happy face. Fellow Daoist Zhu, Fairy Meng actually knows this complete magic skill, and what I learned originally was actually just a fragment. It's good that it's useful. Zuyun smiled and looked over, then said, so, can you feel the thorn demon now? Lengbing said, I'll try. After that, his heart condensed, his expression became solemn, and then, the magic energy in his body condensed to the center of his eyebrows. After a moment, he suddenly opened his eyes, and the demonic energy condensed between his eyebrows seemed to be his third eye, shooting out a brilliant light and rushing into the Kunlun mountains. There! Leng Bing was overjoyed and looked over there. But before he paid attention to the direction, he suddenly screamed and fell to the ground. Meng Wei said in shock, "Why do you have to look at this chaos law formation when you can't look at anything else?" Zhu Yun was also speechless. Even his divine eyes Ju couldn't see through it, but you actually. And the group of people in the crossing tribulation period were also dumbfounded. Laws. In fact, some of them have already come into contact with the level of the immortal realm, and they can also get some information from their ancestors. The most is nothing more than immortal power and laws. Even through some exchanges, they also roughly know how the immortal world is cultivated. Laws and immortal power complement each other. They thought that the abnormality that appeared under the Kunlun mountains was caused by the fusion of the eastern mortal realm. But they never thought that there are laws. Originally, they all wanted to take a look, but even a strong person like Leng Bing screamed and lost their courage. Who knows when the heavenly tribulation will come? What if he is like Leng Bing, paralyzed and powerless, and the heavenly tribulation comes just now? What can he use to resist? Fellow deist Leng, I have a soul-warming pill here, take it quickly. A demon cultivator carefully took out a treasured pill, walked over and fed it to Leng Bing's mouth, and then helped him dissolve the drug power. Zhu Yun was very pleased to see this, and saw that Leng Bing had recovered a little, so he said, I will go find the thorn demon, anyway, I already know the general location. This. Leng Bing was still a little hesitant. Zhu Yun smiled and said, no one knows when the heavenly tribulation will come, it would be bad if you miss it. Besides, no one knows what will happen to the thorn demon after it arrives in the fairyland. After all, there will be more extraterritorial demons in the fairyland. Leng Bing thought about it and felt that what Zhu Yun said made sense. Although he had learned the complete magic skills, he was not proficient enough after all. In addition, his soul was weak at this time. What if the thorn demon took the opportunity to take back? Then I'll trouble you. Leng Bing showed a tired smile. No problem, Zhu Yun laughed and said, if there is a chance, we will meet again in the fairyland, I will return the thorn demon to you. Everyone also knew that Zhu Yun was going there in person, and it was unknown how long he would be gone. Maybe by the time they meet again, they have attracted the heavenly tribulation, and they all bowed and said goodbye. Fellow deist Zhu, see you in the fairyland. Watching Zhu Yun and Meng Wei step into the air, everyone said in unison. Zhu Yun smiled slightly, nodded to everyone, crossed the chaotic circle, and went into the forest of Xianxia. Zhu Yun, how can you be sure that the thorn demon will be here? After landing, Meng Wei asked. Because before I went from here to the eastern mortal realm, the thorn demon smelled the breath of the outer realm demon. So now I think it might have come here. In addition, Leng Bing couldn't feel the breath of the thorn demon either, maybe, the thorn demon had the intention of rebellion again. Meng Wei's expression also became serious, and he said, indeed, the outer realm demon is fickle, and sometimes he will temporarily endure. Zhu Yun suddenly realized and said, the reason why Leng Bing separated from the thorn demon was to let him come from the western mortal realm to the spirit realm to ask me for help. From beginning to end, I have never met the thorn demon. I think he either died here, or he swallowed the outer realm demon and took away the demonic energy in his body. Zhu Yun's eyes flashed with coldness, and he said, if so, when you see the extraterritorial demons in the future, you must not have a trace of luck, just kill them directly. Yes, Meng Wei also said, in the inherited memory of our Saint Demon clan, the extraterritorial demons have a natural hostility towards the human race. Even our Saint Demon clan was originally from the demon realm, but because we look like humans, We also suffered an unexpected disaster and were finally driven out of the demon realm by them. Zuyun nodded and said, in fact, the demons and humans have the same enemy, the extraterritorial demons. Perhaps, if the passage between the demon realm and the immortal realm is closed, the problem of the immortal realm will be solved. And if the demons in the Chaos Star Sea can treat themselves as human beings, I believe the immortal realm can also tolerate them. How can it be so easy? Meng Hui smiled bitterly and said, after hundreds of thousands of years, the demons can only stay in the Chaos Star Sea. It is also because the terrain in the Chaos Star Sea is complicated and the human race has selfishness, otherwise we would have been gone long ago. Zuyun sighed. It is true that where there are people, there are disputes. Even the fairy world is no exception. There are always some short-sighted people who don't think for themselves, and listen to hearsay and believe in one side. Just as Zuyun was sighing, Meng Hui suddenly pushed him aside, and at the same time, the magic knife in his hand suddenly slashed towards the back. Puff! The magic knife entered the flesh, and a scream sounded. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1594. Zuyun suddenly turned around and saw that the magic knife was fiercely inserted into the back of an extraterrestrial demon. Is this the Thorn Demon? When he saw the appearance clearly, Zuyun couldn't help but feel a little confused. The backs are similar, but the heads are completely different. Zuyun, the demons outside the realm can devour each other and evolve to become stronger. The reason why our demon clan moved to the fairy world is because we don't want to annihilate our clan. I see. Hearing Meng Hui's words, Zuyun's heart felt cold again. It can be seen that the demons outside the territory will definitely become stronger and stronger. So their invasion of the fairy world is actually to engulf the human race in the fairy world and gain their abilities. Roar. At this time, the Thorn Demon suddenly let out a roar, and a black energy suddenly spread from the ground under its feet. Be careful, Hui, retreat quickly. Zuyun clearly remembers that this is the ability of the stabbing demon formation. He didn't know what kind of changes would happen to this weird magic formation after the Thorn Demon devoured an extraterritorial demon. After hearing Zuyun's reminder, Meng Hui did not hesitate to let go of his hand and let the magic knife pierce the opponent's back. The black energy spread quickly, and Zuyun and the two fled. Roar. There was another loud roar, but the intensity was a little smaller. Meng Hui smiled sweetly. I almost forgot to mention that my demonic sword can also be devoured. Because it is made of the demonic bones of your extraterrestrial demons, and the demonic souls of the extraterrestrial demons are used as weapons. Roar. The stabbing demon couldn't speak, but there was already panic in his roar. Meng Hui ignored it, but smiled at Zuyun. Let's stay away from the edge for now. This Thorn Demon is very cunning. After being trapped in the lower realm, he must have devoured many extraterrestrial demons to survive until now, otherwise, where can it come up with such means? Zuyun understood that since they had found the Thorn Demon, they were not in a hurry. Just wait until Meng Hui's magic sword devours it until it dies. But at the same time, Zuyun also thought of Zhu Feng, who practiced the magic of swallowing demons. Could it be that there is no connection between this magic sword and the magic of swallowing demons? But now, I don't know where Zhu Feng has gone. And Wan Potion, Sun Qiniang. The two of them ran for a long time, even running out of the cliff of heaven and reaching the East Mortal realm. Only then did the spreading black energy stop. There was no movement behind him. The original restriction on Xianxia has also completely disappeared due to the integration of the Eastern mortal world and the spiritual world. Zuyun guessed it was related to the chaotic circle. Look back. Zuyun held Meng Hui's hand and said with a smile. But as soon as he finished speaking, the ground shook violently. Then, countless spiritual powers surged out from under the ground. It's like there is an extremely thick spiritual vein hidden underground, exuding endless spiritual power into the air. Such a change was so unexpected that they had no idea when it happened. Meng Wei exclaimed in shock, "Zuyun, this seems to be the collapse of the world star." Xing Ben. Zuyun has never heard of this word, but from the literal meaning, it seems to be. Is yellow star about to collapse? Yes, star collapse. In the fairy world, every day a world star comes to an end, and then in the last period, it is like a person's reflection, bursting out all the remaining power. What should we do? If the world star is destroyed, we will also die. Zuyun clenched his fists tightly, his face full of reluctance. He still has a lot of things to do. Boom. At this time, at the other end of the sky cliff, in the sky of Kunlun Mountain, there was also a loud noise. The sky is filled with dark clouds, I don't know when they started to appear. Boom. Countless thunderbolts came down and hit Kunlun Mountain. Heavenly tribulation, their catastrophe is coming. Zuyun murmured and then said, "The world star is about to collapse, will the disaster come again? Maybe it's the yellow star's last struggle? I've heard people say that the world star actually has intelligence. We call it will. And the meaning of the world star's existence is to make weak creatures stronger. Chiang, maybe, they have reached the stage of transcending tribulation, so world star wants to send them out finally. What about us?" Zuyun felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. After all, I am the leader during these tribulation periods, right? "I don't know about this," Meng Wei smiled bitterly and said, "I'm not ready to go to the fairy world. It seems that we can only hide in the universe world, maybe wait until the yellow star turns into dust. We will be in the fairy world when we come out. Is this okay?" Zuyun's eyes widened, unable to understand Meng Wei's words for a while. "I don't know if it's possible, but I just feel that we are on the world star, and the world star is in the universe of the fairy world." Just as Zuyun was smiling bitterly, he suddenly discovered that countless golden lights appeared in the sky. The golden light appeared from a distance and converged towards him. The power of faith. These four words instantly appeared in his mind, and then, scenes of alternating scenes suddenly appeared in front of him. Without exception, those creatures knelt down before his statue and kept praying, wishing the immortal to bless him. This. Meng Wei also looked at the scene in disbelief. Almost all the power of faith in the world is gathered here, and the golden light is so dazzling. Just when he smiled bitterly and said that he was helpless, all the golden light merged into a huge light pillar in the sky. Boom! This beam of light suddenly fell on Zuyun like a catastrophe. Wish Yun. Meng Wei was thrown away. Even though she used all the power of the holy demon in the demon eye, she still couldn't see through the golden light to see if there was Zuyun. Boom! The ground shook suddenly again. Can this huge power of faith not even be stopped by the land of Yellow Star? Wei. Suddenly, Zuyun's roar came from the light pillar. Immediately afterwards, Meng Wei's figure suddenly disappeared from the place. It's Zuyun. He was suddenly unable to withstand such a huge power of faith, and could only reluctantly take Meng Wei back to the immortal mansion. Boom! 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 Several loud noises were the power of faith that followed, not only impacting Zuyun, but also impacting Huang Mingxing. There are finally cracks in the ground. I'm afraid no one would have thought that the yellow star that had just been completely integrated would be the end of its life. Zuyun endured the severe pain and allowed the power of faith to collide with him and break into his purple mansion bit by bit. I will die, I will really die. Zuyun gritted his teeth and racked his brains. But suddenly, a light flashed in his heart. Can't I use the power of faith? These are my powers. And I just couldn't bear such a strong force all of a sudden. If I introduce all these powers of faith into the universe, wouldn't that completely solve this problem? Zuyun ignored the previous problems and quickly connected his mind with the world of the universe. Boom. In an instant, there was a loud bang in his head, and the pressure on his body disappeared. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Ban Zhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1595. This boundless power of faith is like a flood that instantly breaks down a dam. And downstream of the dam is the universe world. Boom. A thunderous voice sounded in Zhu Yun's mind, and the power of faith rushed into the universe in an instant. Just like the original power, it spreads quickly. The pressure on Zhu Yun suddenly decreased, and he breathed a long sigh of relief. Only then did he have time to think about other issues. The power of faith is still strong, but it will no longer hurt Zhu Yun. He looked around, and finally his eyes fell in the distance. The calamity clouds over there have dispersed, and faintly, there are a few golden lights falling in the sky. There are also human figures in the golden light. It seems, they have ascended. Zhu Yun murmured, with a smile on his lips. But suddenly, Zhu Yun thought of Sun Qiniang again. She didn't know where she went. But what is certain is that she must be practicing hard. But even if she is extremely talented, it is impossible for her to practice to the tribulation stage and then ascend to the fairy world in such a short period of time. So, will she die? Zhu Yun just thought for a moment and then breathed a sigh of relief. She has the token given by Ye Yuan. Maybe Ye Yuan will come to save her. Something happened to Huang Mingxing. Perhaps Sun Qiniang had already sensed it and informed Ye Yuan. Some time passed again. All the monks who should ascend also ascended. The ground began to crack. The pillar of light formed by the power of faith gradually faded and disappeared. Hopefully, it's not too late. Zhu Yun concentrated his mind and soared into the sky. The location he was in was the Dongsheng realm that originally belonged to the Dongfan realm. This is the land of the 12 demon clans. It would be too troublesome to bring in the monsters one by one. From a high position, he has seen many demon clans, under the leadership of their respective demon kings, looking for a safe place. With a thought in his mind, he took out the 12 totem poles. Boom! 12 giant pillars reaching the sky suddenly fell from the sky and plunged straight into the ground. I don't know if you have the remnant soul of the destiny ancestral beast inside you. If so, I hope you can tell them and gather here quickly. Zhu Yun poured his spiritual consciousness into the totem pole and sent these words into it. Moment. The 12 totem poles rumbled and shot out thousands of rays of light in all directions, immediately attracting the attention of all the monsters. For Zhu Yun, he couldn't hear any sound at all. But wherever the light goes, it has already conveyed a message. Countless monsters and beasts are coming one after another, converging towards this place. Although the East Mortal realm has been integrated. But actually, to these monsters, this is the cliff of heaven. In just an hour, all the monsters have gathered here under the 12 totem poles. In fact, there are only 11 clans. The world has collapsed. I will take you to another world to live in peace. Are you willing? Zhu Yun still asked. Roar. All the monsters roared. Zhu Yun laughed, waved, and danced. In an instant, all the monsters disappeared without a trace and entered the universe world. Zhu Yun's heart moved. After taking in the totem pole, he also entered it. However, an hour later, Zhu Yun was surprised to find that the world of Dazhu had undergone earth-shaking changes. It's not because the monsters came in and provided more original power. But the power of faith that he introduced earlier seems to be completely integrated with the world of the universe. The connection between Zhu Yun and the world of the universe is even closer. It's no wonder that I can put countless monsters into it at once. From now on, it's still a totem pole relationship. Zhu Yun exclaimed in surprise and then looked towards the monsters. I saw that no matter which clan of monsters or monsters they were in, they were all crawling on the ground. Zhu Yun's heart moved and he said, "There is a sea over there, which I call the World Sea. If you go around the World Sea, the totem pole will be over there. By the way, there are 12 petrified people over there. Demon Saint, remember not to disturb me. Roar. The monster beasts roared loudly, and the world of the universe shook a few times. After Zuyun gave a slight signal, he was about to leave when he suddenly saw a figure flying towards him. Stepping on the spear, who else could it be if it wasn't Zhou Gun? You're back. Zuyun paused for a moment and then asked. When I came back, there was a shock here at first, but I took those two with me, so it was not easy to leave them alone. Zhou Gun gasped slightly. It doesn't matter, the problem has been solved, but there is still some damage to the universe world. You came just in time. You can lure these monsters there. Yes, Master. Zhou Gun immediately accepted the order, bowed his hands to Zuyun, and turned to leave. I don't know when the yellow star will collapse. It will be difficult for me to search for all the creatures in the world by myself. Why not, go to the Xianxia sect? Zuyun also knew the problem he was facing, so he came up with a solution. Although the four mortal worlds have been completely integrated into the spiritual world, and their spiritual powers are connected. But the monks who originally belonged to the mortal world are not that strong. Their abilities are limited and they cannot put everyone into the world of the universe in a short time. Therefore, you must find someone to help. There are many monks in Xianxia sect, and their realms are relatively high. Let them release the news and bring as many monks as possible to gather there. As soon as he said it, Zuyun crossed the cliff of the sky and flew desperately towards Figuang sect. With the help of the chasing character, his speed was comparable to that of the crossing tribulation stage. Not long after, he appeared in Xianxia sect. Zhu Xian is here. Under the statue of Xianxia sect, all the monks were kneeling here. Zuyun looked around and saw that there were many familiar people among them who had rushed here from the mortal world. He was happy at first, and then said, the world collapsed, I want to save all the lives as much as possible, so, I hope that the monks above the God transformation stage will pass this news and let them gather here. In addition, if you meet mortals, I hope you can also bring them here. Hearing Zuyun say this, all the monks were surprised and happy. What was surprising was that the world was actually going to collapse. What was happy was that Zhu Xian came to save them. Yes, Zhu Xian. At this time, many cultivators above the spiritualization stage flew up from the statue in unison, bowed to Zuyun, and then dispersed. But then, some nascent souls and core-forming stages also flew up and shouted, Zhu Xian, we are willing to go too. Zuyun felt warm in his heart, and then laughed, okay, then go. When you are safe, build another Xianxia sect. The Xianxia sect will live forever in the world. The cultivators were delighted to get Zuyun's consent, and they all stepped into the air and left. The news of the fusion of the mortal world has spread. Maybe the cultivators can come. But the mortals? It's too difficult. Since Zhu Xian said all living beings, then naturally, try not to give up on them as much as possible. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1596. Zuyun was actually gambling. Bet that the yellow star at this time can still persist for some time. In other words, the collapse of Huangmingxian came slowly. The shaking has stopped. He had a vague feeling that there was enough time. He fell from the sky and sat on top of his own statue. One day passed, and many monks from the spiritual world heard the news and rushed over. The strange thing is that they are all young monks who are building foundations and refining qi. Zuyun didn't say much, just waved his hand and included them. Before that, he had already taken in the low-level monks of Xianxia sect and asked them to make some preparations. When someone comes in, tell them where this place is and what the rules are. It was another day before some alchemy monks appeared. Zuyun emphasized a little and admitted them as well. But in the next few days, no one came. Zuyun frowned. Was there an accident? But Huang Mingxing didn't show any abnormality. This was another long wait. There were over 1,000 people, with a familiar aura coming from the east. Feeling the spiritual power brought by them, Zuyun was also surprised. It turned out to be people from the Five Elements sect. They have all practiced the Five Elements Chaos Sutra, and Zuyun has already guessed that the Five Elements Chaos Sutra is the conspiracy of the Five Elements Xianxia to stay in Huangxingxing. I don't know if I have ruined the Five Elements loose immortals' good deeds or what. With complicated emotions, Zuyun looked at the leader, Yuan Yinqi. Your sect master, Tu Duduo, is there. After you pass, let Tu Duduo settle you down. After thinking about it, Zuyun said one more thing. Where is the safe place, master? All the monks were overjoyed. The reason why he came at this time was actually because there were differences within the sect. The 5 elements of Chaos Sutra can be practiced until you ascend. If we change the place, can we still ascend? But some people say that the world is ruined, and you still fly to the sky. It was not easy to reach a consensus. Zuyun smiled slightly and waved his big hand. In fact, what is certain is that people from the Five Elements sect will definitely not be his followers. However, in the universe world, perhaps the existence of the Five Elements sect can also help him understand more about the laws of the Five Elements. Speaking of selfishness, it's not an exaggeration. Saving one of your lives and getting some through you is considered a fair deal. Another day has passed. This time it was Xianxia who came with a group of demon cultivators. Miraculously, Xianxia must have heard the news. The monsters transformed into their true bodies, each pulling wooden carts of different sizes. On the wooden carriage, there were also mortals with frightened faces. As for Xianxia, he actually pulled the statue of him in Behu City himself. Xianxia, you are serious? Zuyun laughed dumbly and nodded towards him. Zhu Xian, if it weren't for you, we would have died long ago. Xianxia said with great piety. We'll talk about it later, so come in first. Zuyun waved his hand, and all the demon cultivators and mortals disappeared from sight. A few more days passed, and creatures from the southern mortal realm and the northern mortal realm came one after another. Either a monk or a mortal. Either a demon cultivator or a wild beast. All in all, everything that should come has come. For a long time. The monks from the Immortal Light sect also returned. Zhu Xian, it's almost time. We scanned it with our spiritual senses and brought the news. If you don't want to leave, we didn't force you. Zuyun nodded. There are indeed some people who are unwilling to leave the place where they have lived for generations. Perhaps, destroy together with the yellow star. Also a good choice. This also proves the truth that the more monks are, the more advanced people are, the more they are afraid of death. After taking everyone in, Zuyun looked around quietly. Just as he was about to enter the world of Dazhu, suddenly, there was a loud rumbling sound in the distance. Is it going to collapse? Zuyun was slightly startled. This was too coincidental. But if you look closely, you can see that there are dark shadows coming from nowhere. It may be as big as dozens of feet high. Or small, it looks like a black spot here. He couldn't see the black spots clearly and couldn't identify what they were. But those creatures that were dozens of feet tall could see clearly. The giant beast in the wild sea. Have they heard the news too? Zuyun recalled it, and it seemed that he did not let the monks of Xianguang sect bring the news to them. But the whole world is so lively, and it must still be spread to some extent. A few more breaths passed, and the black shadows came in like a tide. Huang Xing, 3 points is land dust, 7 points is the sea. The sea area is so big that in addition to these huge sea monsters with the blood of the devil, there are also countless ordinary system monsters that originally belonged to the Yellow Star. With such a huge number, Zuyun's immediate concern was that he would not be able to accommodate them. There is no sea in the universe. Although the world sea is large, after the fragments are fused, it is only not much larger than the original world lake. How can this accommodate them? Zuyun couldn't help but feel distressed. It's already here, how can we just let it go? Ho ho. When the giant beasts in the sea saw that Zuyun had discovered them, they couldn't help but let out an urgent roar, fearing that Zuyun would abandon them. We must prepare in the great universe before we can settle them. Otherwise, if we go in, we'll probably die. Zuyun smiled bitterly and flew towards the giant beast. Do you understand human language? Zuyun asked calmly while standing in front of a huge demon beast head like Kun. Roar. Kun beast nodded repeatedly. That's good, Zuyun smiled calmly and said, I can't guarantee your safety. I have to leave and prepare now. You should be patient. Roar. Kun beast's voice was much lower, and Zuyun could hear the excitement that was hard to suppress. Then, he saw Kun beast crouched down and stuck to the ground. Roar. The other sea monsters also shouted at the same time. Zuyun's figure flashed and he entered the great universe world. There were countless creatures, whether human, demon, or beast, and it was very lively at this time. People like Dago and Ergo also came over and guided them to go as far as possible. There were enough places in the great universe world for them to settle down. Xiaozu. Seeing Zuyun coming, both of them rushed forward. Zhu Xian. Roar. Both humans and beasts fell to the ground at the same time. This world made them feel Zuyun's strength. Like a god. The sea monster is coming. I'll go to the world sea to take a look. You ask them to stay away from here as much as possible, but, also tell them about the situation of Qingping Fairyland to avoid unnecessary trouble. I've said it all. Don't worry. The big dog wiped his sweat. This really kept him busy. Zuyun smiled and said thank you for your hard work, and then ran to the center of the universe. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1597. Zuyun, you are finally here. A familiar voice suddenly sounded, it turned out to be Xianxia. Are you awake? Zuyun was stunned for a moment, then said happily. Ha ha ha, of course, look, they are fine too. The formation Immortal was originally a ball of light, but suddenly it turned into a human form and pointed towards the world mountain. I saw that the last time I saw it, it looked like a dead world tree, but now it was completely restored. At the same time, World Mountain, which was originally like a barren rocky mountain, is now full of life. Call out! Call out! Two figures suddenly flew over, it was World Tree and World Mountain that had turned into human forms. Thanks to you, otherwise we don't know when we will wake up. The formation Immortal laughed and became very warm to Zuyun. Zuyun took a closer look and found that his body had become a little firmer. I have something to do here, let's talk about it later. Zuyun nodded and walked towards the sea of the world. What's the matter? It seems urgent. World Tree actually saw Zuyun's expression. Well, all the sea monsters in the wild sea are begging me to include them, but this world sea. All sirens. The World Tree has survived in the spiritual world for a long time, so it naturally knows how big the wild sea is and how many sea monsters there are in it. So, is there any way? Zuyun spread his arms. Beside, the immortal urn sounded loudly and said angrily, Zuyun, you humming look down on me. Why don't you ask me? These words made Zuyun immediately happy, do you have any idea? Of course, you don't even know who I am. The immortal array folded his hands on his chest and said proudly, "Come on, beg me and I will help you." "Ha," Zuyun smiled disdainfully and said, "Xianxia, I have already thought of a way, I don't need you." "Okay, stop pretending. Just say a few words and you can come up with a solution." "Why not?" Hearing the formation Immortals question, Zuyun smiled faintly and said, "Isn't it just using formations? However, something needs to be added." Array Immortals' pupils shrank. "Did you really guess it?" "Of course," Zuyun said with a smile, "you said you would help me find a way. Apart from practicing in the immortal world and having a formation that is stronger than me, what else do you have? My realm is higher than yours." The formation immortal knew that Zuyun had thought of a solution, but he was still a little unconvinced. Zuyun smiled and said, yes, your level is higher than mine, but I have to go to work, can you help me?" "I'll do it. At least I'm faster than you." The formation immortal curled his lips and said, "You go dig the immortal crystal, and I'll set up the formation." "How many do you need?" 108. "Is this enough?" "That's enough, it's just a small formation to expand space." The two hit it off immediately, and Zuyun quickly flew towards the barren stone mountain. "After going back and forth many times, I finally collected all the fairy crystals. Trouble is trouble, but after arriving in the fairy world, it should be possible to store fairy crystal rings and other fairy weapons, right?" Zuyun scratched his head and watched the array immortal rise up and arrange the immortal crystals around the sea of the world. From the outside, nothing seems to have changed. But in fact, the space inside has been expanded countless times. After finishing his work, the formation immortal said, "Zuyun, this is just a temporary method. Next, we still have to rely on the old tree." Zuyun understood the meaning, turned to look at World Tree, and said, "Can this sea become bigger?" "Yes," World Tree affirmed, "because if you want to change the world sea, you still need the power of the source to push it slowly. This is a process and takes time." The array immortal smiled and said, "The reason why immortal crystals are used is that the immortal crystals can provide long-lasting effects. This array can probably last for decades. I believe it should be enough by then." "That's good." Zuyun smiled happily. World Tree said, "This is also due to the Master. Most of the countless creatures inserted this time are your believers. I feel that they are very familiar." Zuyun laughed and said, "If it weren't for the power of faith they provided, I wouldn't be able to break through the sudden shackles between me and the universe." Xianxia suddenly said, "But then again, what happened outside? The yellow star is about to collapse. I have no choice but to put them into this world. However, there are still some who don't want to leave, so I don't force them." "I see." The formation immortal disagreed and said, "It is very common for world stars to collapse." "You are very common, but I have never seen you." Zuyun rolled his eyes and said, "Are you ready? If so, it's time for me to go out and bring them in." Go ahead, go ahead." Zuyun stepped away and felt the aura on his body. Countless sea monsters raised their heads and looked at Zuyun expectantly. "I'm ready for you, but I have something to say first. That's my world. If anyone dares to break the rules and kill innocent people indiscriminately, I won't blame you for being rude." Roar. All the sea monsters roared at the same time again, and then lowered their heads to show submission. Zuyun nodded and raised his hand. In an instant, all the sea monsters disappeared. Zuyun also looked into the distance at this time. "I saw that the surging sea water was raging crazily on this land. Moreover, the sea water continued to boil, and billowing white smoke emerged from the cracks in the ground. It should be really close. Perhaps it was such a change that made these sea monsters have no choice but to leave the sea and then heard the news, right?" Zuyun murmured, and then entered the world of Dazhu. Originally, he wanted to enter the immortal mansion to be with Mengwe. But what if the Daewoo glazed mirror is left behind? It would be better to enter the immortal mansion from the great universe world. Entering the universe world again, although it is very messy, everything is going on in an orderly manner. Zuyun flew to Barren Stone Mountain, which was a forbidden area in the universe, and no one would come in. Then, he entered the immortal mansion in a flash. Boundless. The moment he saw Mengwe, Zuyun smiled happily. Wish Yun. Mengwe rushed over crazily and hugged Zuyun tightly. At that time, she was thrown into the immortal mansion by Zuyun, and she almost thought that Zuyun was going to die. It's okay, it's okay. Zuyun gently stroked her back and comforted her. What's going on outside now? Mengwe wiped the tears from his eyes and said. It's going to be destroyed, but fortunately, I brought in all the creatures who are willing to enter the world of the universe, that's why I made you wait for so long. He is already in the integration stage, and the difference in the flow of time has made Mengwe almost alone in the empty room for more than half a year. As long as it's okay, then, when will we go out again? Zuyun showed a wicked smile. What's the rush? After saying that, he suddenly picked up Mengwe from the waist and rushed towards the bedroom. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1598. Time turns. Zuyun didn't know how long it would take for Huang Mingxin to collapse and calm down. For him, everything about the lower world has been settled. As for the great universe world, he doesn't need to worry too much for the time being. He simply stayed in the immortal mansion, living a life of dependence with Mengwe. Although he does not have infinite lifespan, when he reaches the integration stage, his lifespan is enough. Coupled with the difference in the speed of time in the immortal mansion, it is actually almost the same as immortality. When you reach the fairy world and are bathed in the fairy light, you will naturally live as long as heaven. Embark on the journey of immortality for hundreds of years. Zuyun wasted time for the first time. By the time he came to his senses and pinched his fingers, more than a year had passed. But strangely, Mengwe's belly showed no sign of bulge. What are you looking at? Seeing Zuyun looking at his belly from time to time, Mengwe couldn't help but shyly shouted. I was thinking, Zuyun said with a bad smile, I want you to give me a child. My old Zhu family can't only be of Zhu Feng's lineage, right? It was not a sudden thought on his part, but now Zhu Feng was nowhere to be found, and Zhu Xiang was also embarking on the path to immortality. I don't know what will happen to him in the end, but if he doesn't inherit and reproduce, wouldn't it go against his father's wish for blessing? He has already developed some habits, and sometimes he cannot count on others. In fact, it is still somewhat selfish. His future in the fairy world is uncertain. But if something unexpected happened, he would also leave behind descendants. When the time comes to pass this immortal mansion to him, it may be lonely, but at least there will be no crisis. Hearing what Zuyun said, Mengwe felt even more ashamed. He lowered his head and whispered like a mosquito, if you want me to have a baby, tell me earlier, I don't need to control my body. Zuyun suddenly realized, okay, it turns out it was you. I thought. Do you think humans and demons can't have offspring? Mengwe raised his head slightly and said. I didn't think so. Zuyun didn't know how to explain it. Anyway, the truth was now revealed. Mengwe's cheeks glowed and he said, Zuyun, if you want it, we can do it now. Zuyun laughed dumbly and said, forget it now, I think the outside time is almost up. Well, let's go to the great universe world first. Good. The two stood up, pushed open the gate of the immortal mansion, and then entered. Behind him is the endless void. Before this, they were just sitting close together, feeling the fairy mansion floating in the void. Zuyun, you haven't been here for a long time. Seeing Zuyun's formation immortal, he was very excited and said, "Go and see what good things I have done in your world." Zuyun looked suspicious. "What did you do?" "He, you will know when you go there. Anyway, the trees and mountains listen to my opinion. I can tell you, if there is an invasion by foreign enemies next time, it won't be that easy. Have you set up some formations in the universe?" Apart from this, Zuyun could not think of any other reason. Of course, the formation Immortal admitted openly and said, "The formations already follow the rules, and the rules on your side are gradually improving, so I thought, what if I laid out the formations according to the corresponding rules in advance? Does that mean, the moment the universe world is completely formed, these formations will become natural formations?" As soon as he mentioned this, Zuyun became interested and said, "To be honest, what is the difference between natural formations and man-made formations?" The difference is huge. Upon hearing Zuyun's request, the formation Immortal laughed and said, "You have received my inheritance, and your understanding of formations is very different from mine, but when it comes to natural formations, the biggest difference between magic and man-made formations is actually the source of power." Zuyun understood it with just one click, and suddenly said in shock, "The power used by natural formations is actually the power of the source. And man-made formations can use various powers." He knew this well. In the early years, he used spirit stones. As the level of the spirit stone increases, the power of the corresponding formation will also become stronger. Later, he also used spirit beads, pseudo-immortal crystals, and even pure immortal crystals to let the formation Immortal set up a peerless formation around the world sea, so that the world sea could contain all the sea monsters. At this time, when I heard the Immortal saying this, I immediately thought of the key. "I kind of understand," Zuyun said in surprise. "At that time, when the laws that match the formations in the universe appear, those formations will become natural formations, and then they can be used by the original power. And I can control this world." "The original power?" "That's right." The array Immortal nodded with a smile and pretended to say, "You can teach me." Lu Chen was overjoyed, but he suddenly remembered something and asked, "If the world here is completely formed, how will it appear in the fairy world?" "I don't know about this." The formation Immortal shook his head and said, "That's why I set up the formation like this. All in all, some things should be done according to human affairs and left to fate." After that, he patted Zuyun on the shoulder and said, "Go and see for yourself. In fact, I just set up the big formation here not long ago, and I am really tired. Next, wait for you to arrive. You're in the fairy world, just let me know again." "Array Immortal, thank you." Zuyun also put away his joking expression and said sincerely, "If you want to thank me, just honor the promise." "I won't forget it." Zuyun raised his head slightly and said seriously, "I trust you." The formation Immortal smiled, then stood up and flew towards the sea of the world. "Let's go too," Zuyun said to Mengwei. "Let's go? Didn't you just come here? Didn't you say you would take a look in the universe?" Zuyun looked at the light and shadow that was about to fall above the sea of the world, and said, "If the array Immortal takes action, what else is there to see? Follow the laws and develop, nothing will happen to us. Everything has laws, and everything has laws. I don't think I need to do it anymore. Interfering with the natural development of the universe." Mengwei seemed to realize something, then nodded and took Zuyun's hand. "Just leave from here." The last time, he directly entered the world of the universe. If you go out at this time, if the yellow star has not collapsed, he will still appear in his original position. But if the yellow star collapses, where will it be? Zuyun took a deep breath and couldn't help but feel a little nervous. But what should be faced must still be faced. Mengwei also felt what Zuyun was thinking, and squeezed his little hand slightly to show encouragement. Zuyun smiled slightly and immediately relaxed. "Let's go." The next moment, the two of them appeared in the void. The feet do not touch the ground, and the head does not hold up to the sky. In all directions, there are dots of stars. Just like his star-moving formation. Is this, the fairy world? Zuyun murmured, and before he could react, countless golden lights suddenly appeared and pressed towards him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1599. Wei, be careful. Wish Yun, be careful. The two said in unison. Zuyun felt the power and recognized it as immortal power. And Meng Wei naturally recognized it, but he was just worried that Zuyun might not be able to bear it. Looking at each other and smiling, the two of them dodged and avoided the direction of the fairy light. The fairy light also flashes away, coming from the darkness and leaving with the darkness. Could this be the work of heaven in the immortal realm? Zuyun looked at Meng Wei with questioning eyes. That's right, Meng Wei tilted his head and said, after all, I am a demon and have never had such an experience. But you should change the name. It should be called Immortal Deo. Immortal Wei. Zuyun disagreed and said with a smile, no matter what, I'm here anyway. Zuyun, where should we go first? Meng Wei nodded and looked around. You ask me, who should I ask? Zuyun said with a smile, I am far less familiar with the fairy world than you are. Although I have known for a long time that the fairy world is a universe, but now that I am here, I have no direction. He finally realized what it meant to be surrounded by people in all directions. Meng Wei gave a suggestion, how about you come with me to Luanzhongai? After all, I am familiar with it. It's good that you are familiar with it, but how many years have passed in the fairy world? Maybe the saint and demon clan have changed, and no one recognizes you as a saint anymore. Meng Wei had never thought about this issue. Hearing what Zuyun said, he couldn't help but feel silent for a while. Why don't we go to Purgatory Mountain? Zuyun has the certificate of Purgatory Mountain, the Tianfu. I believe it can be a place to stay. Purgatory Mountain. Meng Wei was stunned for a moment, then asked in surprise, why do you want to go to Purgatory Mountain? Zuyun asked strangely, isn't it possible? He once taught the divine eye technique to his former slave Xiao, and he did mention Purgatory Mountain at that time. Meng Wei should have this memory. But he didn't say that his heavenly talisman still contained the remnant soul of the ancestor of the Lin family. But her reaction was a little too intense. It's not impossible, Meng Wei smiled bitterly and said, you killed Nanggong Tianli, and you were carrying the Dao glazed mirror. Where is Purgatory Mountain? There are evil immortals here, and many of them are the evil immortals who have followed Nanggong Tianli for many years. You mean, those evil cultivators believe that I am related to Nanggong Tianli, so they will kill me? But, can they come out in Purgatory Mountain? Meng Wei asked back, then why do you think they won't be able to get out? Just like you said, who else in the chaotic sea of stars remembers that I am the saint of the holy demon clan? Now it used to be so. After many years, we now know nothing about Purgatory Mountain. Zuyun took a deep breath and said, then where should we go? Since we can't go to Chaotic Star Sea and Purgatory Mountain, why don't we go to Fairyland? Wonderland. This was not the first time Zuyun heard this title, but when it came from Meng Wei's mouth, it tasted weird. You can understand it as a city in the lower realm. Meng Wei smiled slightly and said, the fairy world can't be all these voids, and the immortals won't communicate and fight with people in the void, right? Generally speaking, they will gather in the fairyland among them. Even the 5 immortal realms and the imperial palace of the immortal emperor are basically in a fairyland. Only insidious people like Nanggong Tianli hide the immortal palace in that kind of void interface. Taking the city as an example, Zuyun understood immediately. Then where are we going? Meng Wei smiled and said, you can go in any direction. There are countless fairy lands in the fairy world. Then let's go. The two of them randomly found a direction and headed into the distance. But not long after leaving, a figure suddenly appeared out of thin air where the fairy light had dispersed. Strange, strange, could it be that the magic weapon we just picked up has something to do with those two people? Follow us and take a look. I saw that he was holding Meng Wei's magic knife in his hand, and then disappeared out of thin air again with his figure. Sure enough, as Meng Wei said, the two quickly discovered a fairy land in the environment. From a distance, it looks like a continent floating in the ocean. This is the fairy land. When we look at the world star in the fairy land, it actually looks like an ordinary small ball. On the way here, Meng Wei also explained a lot to Zuyun. What should I pay attention to in Wonderland? Zuyun nodded slightly and then asked. There's nothing to pay attention to. It's the same as the lower world anyway. Wait, you haven't been forged by the fairy light, so you may not be able to adapt to the pressure of the fairy land. Just pay a little attention. Zuyun nodded to express that he understood, and then the two of them flew towards the fairy land. As soon as he stepped onto the solid ground, Lu Chen's legs softened slightly, as if he was carrying a huge mountain on his back. Thanks to Meng Wei's reminder, he was not pressed to the ground. Kikik. Seeing Zuyun's embarrassment, Meng Wei couldn't help but laugh. What's so funny? Zuyun frowned, secretly using the power of chaos in his body to resist it, and then he felt a little more comfortable. However, the pressure is still there, and every time he takes a step, his spiritual energy will be depleted a lot. We are not in a hurry to go to crowded places. You might as well get used to it here first. In fact, the immortal light forging body is just for the lower realm monks to adapt. The place where they landed was in the wilderness in the fairy land, and no one was seen. Meng Wei rolled up his skirt and sat down against the small tree on the side. He bent his knees and held his chin with his hands, just watching Zuyun blushing and performing the steps of the immortality secret. It's not bad. Zuyun's originally carefree and elegant pace was now caused by pressure, which made Zuyun quite uncomfortable. But fortunately, he also knew that if he couldn't walk well, then if he encountered it was dangerous and he couldn't even run away. Gradually, Zuyun consumed most of the chaos power in his body and finally adapted a lot. It's almost time. Let's go take a look. Zuyun looked into the distance and subconsciously used the divine eye technique. Most of the chaos power in his body was immediately consumed. Let's go. Meng Wei patted the hem of his skirt, stood up and followed Zuyun away. Strange, strange. It is clear that he is a monk who suddenly appeared in the lower realm. He has no aura of immortal power at all, and the immortal world seems to have a lot of pressure on him, but just now, it seems that he used some immortal eye technique. The man who picked up the magic knife suddenly appeared again after the two of them had gone away. Obviously, this magic sword belongs to that woman. The key is that the aura on this magic sword is very pure and it is a good thing, but why? The woman doesn't seem to care. The man shook his head, thought for a moment, and followed closely. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1600. Actually, it's quite different from the lower realm. Zuyun looked around, walking out of the forest with Qin Yao Yao, and soon turned onto a dirt road. After walking a little further, the dirt road was paved with stone slabs. Looking carefully, these stone slabs are actually faintly glowing with light, and they are obviously a kind of fairy crystal. However, Zuyun could tell that the immortal power contained in it was still much less than the immortal crystal on the barren stone mountain. Zuyun seemed to be absent-minded, but in fact he was secretly remembering some details in his heart. He came to the fairy world for the first time, and although he had a little understanding of it through various information, after all, what he heard from others and what he saw with his own eyes were still very different. As we walked forward on the immortal crystal stone road, there were soon more people around. There is no doubt that every one of them is an immortal, and their bodies are also filled with varying degrees of immortal power. There were just a lot of immortals with hurried expressions on their faces as they hurried forward. Obviously something was about to happen. What happened? Zuyun looked at Mengwei subconsciously. There must be something going on. These are mostly in the realm of earthly immortals. Go over and take a look. Let's see and then talk. The two suddenly became more cautious. Following the crowd, they arrived at the gathering place of these earthly immortals in a short time, among which there were many true immortals and golden immortals. We're almost there, a voice came from the crowd, saying, this is a good opportunity. If you perform well, you can skyrocket. Zuyun raised his head slightly. He couldn't see clearly, but he could feel that the person speaking should be above these people. He didn't dare to use the divine eye technique indiscriminately, lest he attract attention. Xianxia, hurry up, we can't wait any longer. That's right, we are counting on today. My mother-in-law wants a set of Luo Shang, and I'm so excited that I'm going to have calluses on my ears. Both of them were silent, but from the words of these people, one could tell that it was some kind of work to earn immortal crystals. Ha ha ha, the man laughed and said, isn't I here? After all, where is the fairy crystal mine? We also need to be prepared. If the evil fairy is attracted, wouldn't it put you in danger? Don't blame me for being so careful. This immortal crystal mine is very important to the immortal emperor of the West. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let me come here to recruit people. What, was it ordered by the immortal emperor himself? Suddenly, the crowd here was excited. Yes, the man nodded and smiled, the immortal emperor is in urgent need of some high-grade immortal crystals this time. If anyone can find them, it will be a great achievement. As for the other grade immortal crystals you dug out, they will naturally belong to you. We, the immortals of the immortal emperor's mansion, will never accept it? Then what if we dug up the middle grade immortal crystal? Among the crowd, a true immortal asked loudly. Ha ha ha, of course, it will be given to whoever digs it up. But I have something to say before I come here this time. If you want to leave, you must dig out the high-grade immortal crystal, otherwise you will blame me for being rude. Everyone expressed their understanding. The fairy crystal mine that can produce high-grade fairy crystals is naturally different. Moreover, the other party can own all the other grades of immortal crystals, which is not too much. Naturally, the fairy world is divided into levels just like the lower world. Earthly immortals, true immortals, and golden immortals are all lower immortals. After that comes the immortal. Finally, there is the immortal lord. Of course, this is just a name. A group of immortals called the immortal the supreme immortal. It was obvious that he was extremely powerful and even held a certain position in the Western Immortal Emperor's mansion. The Western Immortal Emperor is still trustworthy. Meng Wei leaned into Zuyun's ear and whispered, it's just that I can't be sure whether that person is from the Western Immortal Emperor's mansion. Zuyun chuckled, nodded slightly, indicating that he understood, and then said, then this mine. Meng Wei thought for a while and said, you are new to the immortal world. If you wander around outside, you will inevitably encounter danger. But when you go to the mine, you can communicate with the immortals and get some news. Moreover, it will be relatively safer in the mine. The other party only wants high-grade immortal crystals. When we want to leave, can you take a few pieces from the barren rock mountain? Zuyun thought for a moment and said, then let's join in and dig for a few days to see. Flying all the way from the void and not having any clear goals, Zuyun naturally felt that Meng Wei's proposal was a good one. The immortal explained some more rules and answered many people's questions, and finally said, if you want to get rich, come with me. If you have doubts, forget it. We won't force you, we can only say yes, you may have missed a good opportunity to soar into the sky. Well, if you want to come, wait at the Sendai here in 1 day, and I will prepare the ferry boat. After that, the immortal squeezed out of the crowd and walked away. The rest of the immortals were also in groups. This mining is very tempting. But as I said before, if I don't dig up the high-grade immortal crystal, I won't give it out. They also need to think carefully, and naturally they will find people they know well to join forces so that they can have someone to take care of them. The front looks like a small town in this fairyland. Most of them go there with the intention of sitting down and talking. Soon, only Zuyun and Xianxia were left here. Shall we go too? Zuyun pursed his lips toward the front. It's okay to go and have a look, Meng Wei said with a smile, but we can't enter the restaurant. After all, we don't have the immortal crystal on us. If I had known better, I would have taken out the high-grade immortal crystal inside, smashed it, and used it as broken silver, so it wouldn't attract anyone's attention. Zuyun was laughing and talking, and when he was about to leave, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of them. Hey, boy, the figure said, you want to go mining? Zuyun stood still, with a hint of vigilance in his eyes, and said, why not? It's not impossible, the man said, but if we can't dig out the high-grade immortal crystal, wouldn't you be trapped in that mine forever? My luck can't be so bad, right? Zuyun reserves his own opinions. He, the man smiled and said, you may have good luck in the lower world, but you may not have good luck in this fairy world. Zuyun's pupils shrank, and he suddenly clenched his fists in his hands. Even Meng Wei took a few steps back and stood beside Zuyun. Don't act like you are facing a formidable enemy, the man smiled and said, I just want to remind you that there are risks in the immortal world, and you need to be careful when mining. Have you ever thought about why the immortal said that you should give you the rest of the immortal crystals? Zuyun was pregnant with the Pinxian crystal, but he didn't think about it. When he heard what this person said, his expression changed. I have a high-grade immortal crystal in my possession. But that mine? What if there is no high-grade fairy crystal? Doesn't that mean that the immortal is lying?